Welcome to the We Watch This Movie podcast, where we sit down, dissect the latest and greatest in movies. I'm Dan, joined by the man with over 2,000 films on his watch list, Jackson. How you doing?
Fantastic, Dan. Never been better.
Never been better. Of course, we thank you all for tuning in to episode 3, where we're going to take a look at The Invisible Man. But before that, we want to thank you all for tuning in to our first 2 episodes. We've had a great response. Our podcast has gone global, Jackson. Can say that now. I can say that with over 20 countries have tuned in. And, of course, we want to thank Displayed as well for, again, sponsoring today's video. Jackson, The Invisible Man.
Let's do it.
Let me help you.
You can't help me. Surprise.
Let's set the scene. Trapped in a violent, controlling relationship with a wealthy and brilliant scientist, Cecilia Cass escapes in the dead of night and disappears into hiding, aided by her sister, their childhood friend, and his teenage daughter. But when Cecilia's abusive ex commits suicide and leaves her a generous portion of his vast fortune, Cecilia suspects his death was a hoax. As a series of eerie coincidences turns lethal, threatening the lives of those she loves, Cecilia's sanity begins to unravel as she desperately tries to prove that she is being hunted by someone nobody can see.
John Cena? Had to say it. What were your thoughts, Jackson?
Great. This was such a good watch.
It was, wasn't it?
Going into it, I was a little uneasy. I'm thinking Blumhouse Productions, low budget. We're going to get lots of jump scares. Elisabeth Moss, she's a great actress. Some of her film stuff has been a bit uneven. Leigh Whannell, plenty of talent. Some things I've seen of his, like Dead Silence, didn't quite
fully
land.
Proven himself. Yep.
This, fantastic.
Yeah, I think this cements them both. I think she put on a really stellar performance, Elisabeth Moss, in this. I couldn't think of anyone else that could play this role quite like her. She's got that sort of, not that unevenness that you're talking about, but she's
a little unhinged.
Unhinged, yeah.
A little like she hasn't quite got a grip on things.
Correct. But
she's still got this real controlling presence on screen where she's magnetic. You have to watch, and she really draws you in. It's a really emotional performance.
It is. Putting on this much of an emotional
for a genre
performance.
picture.
Yeah, exactly. I thought Leigh was brilliant as well as the writer-director. I thought the writing was really, not astounding, but it was really good for a horror film. I don't want to play too much into genre picking and this and that.
Well, it is a blend between sci-fi and horror, and some of those I can think back to films like Event Horizon, where sometimes the writing is a bit clunky, it doesn't quite come together. Here it works. Leigh Whannell is going to be a name to watch.
He is, isn't he?
He's had some really interesting films that have hit the market early on. You're not sure what to think. They've really grabbed audiences and brought this on a wild ride. Easily his best known has to be Saw, and if we get another franchise similar to that, wow.
Oh, exactly. I really enjoyed myself with this, Jackson. I went to an advanced screening. Sorry I didn't invite you for that one.
Thanks, mate. Really appreciate that. Must have got lost in the mail.
I thought you were busy.
Thanks.
We got an advanced screening. I didn't watch the trailer. I didn't go looking for any info. I went in completely blind, and I recommend that to most people. I think it was, once I went back and watched that trailer after the film came out, and I'd watched the film, it really did spoil a lot of the stuff that we saw in there, some of those key moments. So if you haven't watched the trailer, guys, make sure you watch the film before the trailer. But anyway, went to the advanced screening, wasn't expecting much, and was really pleasantly surprised. As you said, there was precautions with Blumhouse. A low budget film. This is a really low budget film. This is what, $7 million?
$7 million.
That's crazy.
Blumhouse are notorious for pumping out a lot of these horror films on streaming services like Netflix. So expectations initially low, but they really hit this one out of the park.
Yeah, and it was a real deep dive into this gaslighting and domestic sort of abuse of this character that Elisabeth Moss plays, and then obviously The Invisible Man. It's a movie that was it's a remake, Essentially, it's a movie that's been done before, but not this way. It's a modern take, and I think they nailed it.
Absolutely. Listening to some interviews with Leigh Whannell, how he wanted to tell the story and what he found was most engaging was shifting the focus from this crazed maniac as the Invisible Man, and instead focusing on the victim. And particularly in 2020, today's society, this hits really well. Initially coming out of the film at first, I thought, yeah, that was okay. The more I've thought about it, the more a lot of these themes resonate with me, and the execution as well.
At
Highly
first,
recommend.
you weren't that high on it as I was.
That's right.
So I was saying, and I still believe this is one of the best horror mysteries in the last 10 years.
Whoa, that's pretty big.
No, yeah. I really have a high regard for this film, and maybe it's because I'm a little biased, where it's an all Aussie crew, shot in Australia, where we're from, and Leigh Whannell, Australian. Only 3 or 4 American British actors came in for this, Elisabeth Moss being one of them. The rest is Australian. But I just thought it hit in every aspect, whether it was music, cinematography. One of the things I loved about it was these slow pans, just the small details, the slow pans to an empty room or an empty space in the room, and you get this uneasy feeling, is he there? And, you don't know, but with that pan, usually in cinema, they'll pan to another character. In this, you're panning to this empty chair. And it's just, there's something brilliant about it.
There's something uneasy, and it doesn't take any lavish special effects or
No.
even a real overbearing score. You're not listening for these Blumhouse stings to come out and scare the heck out of you.
No.
You're looking at these finer details, and everything within the frame is so expertly set up. There's a great callback to it was the first iteration of the Invisible Man on screen, played by Claude Rains. We get this fantastic callback where it's a coat and a jacket on a mannequin. That's the scare.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That was great. To portray that sort of worried feel that she was...
It's vulnerability is
Yeah.
what it is. Elisabeth Moss is very vulnerable throughout this whole film, and she's really... We're not going to go too much into the plot here, but as it goes on, as it progresses, she continues to be stripped back and have her stability questioned. We believe from the first few frames that, yes, she is being stalked. As it goes on, who knows? Not so much. Some parts of that were a little clumsy to me. I didn't quite agree with some of the choices being made, but on the whole, she's amazing. She carries the film, and it's great.
She does. Even with, you touched on the music, usually Blumhouse go for these high strings and things like that. This music was something different. It had this sci-fi vibe, and it was by Benjamin Wallfish, who did the soundtrack for It.
Okay.
One of the best horrors, I think, or the first one anyway.
Another big call.
Was one of the better horrors, let's say, the last decade. Did you like It?
I can't say I saw it.
Okay.
I did sleep on it. Luckily,
didn't
no
see it?
Pennywise came in my dreams.
Yeah, he did the soundtrack for that, which was really haunting and set the mood. He also did Blade Runner, which was a fantastic soundtrack, 2049. So this guy's a really good composer, and he's come in here and nailed it, in my opinion. The music in this, I don't know if you remember it, but in the cinema it was blasting so loud. And
yeah, it was overbearing. It really
was overbearing,
it put
but
us
in
in
a
that
good
same
way.
mental space.
Correct.
With Elisabeth Moss' character Cecilia, where she's out there, she's listening, trying to work out, is there someone in here with me? Where's this sound coming from? And we're getting hit by use of these high strings. Really effective.
Like these synths, it was very sci-fi.
It was very late 80s,
inspired.
early 90s.
Yeah.
I'm going to say aesthetic, but it was that similar soundscape. Think films like John Carpenter and James Cameron.
Can I ask, so I really love music in films. I'm always listening out for it. I think it plays a big role in if a film hits for me or not. Most people don't share that same opinion. For you, did you think about that music when you watched Invisible Man? Did it stand out for you at all? Or is this something you're just reflecting on now and you can think back? Do you remember at all?
The score was fairly understated for the most part. I can't say it was remarkable. It was effective, certainly in those tense scenes between her and whoever the Invisible Man might be.
Yeah.
It was fine. It's a low budget. We can't expect a really slamming score, and it wasn't the film for
That's the
that.
thing. For
You
me,
mentioned some of those sci-fi sins. That's what I love too.
For me, it did stand out. So I disagree. For me, it really stood out, and maybe it's because I'm looking, but
Listening.
maybe I'm looking and listening. Yeah, maybe I'm listening for it, but I thought it was from the opening scenes. I knew, wow, this is powerful. There's something going on here. Who's done this? I wanted to know, and when it was Benjamin, it all clicked. But yeah, as an overall package, the cinematography, as we said, was great. Music, the acting was great. It was Elisabeth Moss movie. There were some supporting roles there that worked well, but
I disagree.
you disagree?
I disagree. Yes, it's her movie. She does a great job carrying it, and Leigh Whannell gives her plenty of freedom. He had an awesome actress there who was cast. The rest of the supporting cast, they were okay, passable, I suppose.
You didn't like the family?
The cop and his daughter, I did enjoy their performances. The rest of the cast were fairly uneven. It was a little by design, though. They didn't have all that much to work with. The Invisible Man himself was, for me, a bit of a disappointment.
For me,
Not enough to drag the film down.
The cop and the daughter, they were there as the arc to show the audience that she was going a little crazy, or the reaction to that, because where else are we going to get that reaction of, you're crazy, there's no Invisible Man? Who else is going to provide that rather than these two people? So that was where I felt like they were most serviceable. That was their main purpose. The brother of the Invisible Man, was he a lawyer? Some sort of corporate job? I thought there was something uneasy about him every time he was on screen. And the Invisible Man himself, we don't see much of him, but I thought he was fantastic when we did see him. You disagree?
He was okay.
Okay.
This film, from the victim's perspective, I wanted to get a little bit more out of this guy. I didn't quite feel that he was, after hearing so much about how manipulative he was and how he controlled people, sure, I could see how he might mislead someone like Elisabeth Moss, but it just didn't quite hit home. I wanted something stronger. I wanted something more brooding out of this guy.
So before we get into spoilers, Jackson, let's give the audience who do want to still see it a general thoughts, an overview before we head into that more depthy spoilers.
Go see this film.
Yeah?
Simple as that.
Yeah, me too. I highly recommend it. Unlike Bloodshot, you're going to have a good time with this. Everyone I've recommended it to have thanked me, and I haven't met someone that didn't get at least entertained by it. Or, I don't think anyone said this is a bad film. So that's always a good thing. But definitely recommend. Spoiler alert. Let's head into the spoiler section, Jackson. A lot to uncover and unpack here. Firstly, I want to start with the build-up to this Invisible Man once she gets home and things start getting more and more intense. Things keep sort of escalating. How do you think that was handled? Did it go on too long? Did it drag?
It did feel like we'd already seen a full film by the time she's admitted to a mental hospital. And despite being so vulnerable, Elisabeth Moss' character did move with quite a lot of agency. There was a lot that she had a lot to do. She had a lot of action.
There didn't seem to be a dull moment.
No, we kept moving from the first few frames of the film. She's escaping from this abusive, supposedly, relationship. She's picked up. We see some early flutters of some violence when he's punching through a window. He's trying to keep her locked down, and there's plenty happening. I loved Leigh Whannell's work on the story. There's plenty of foreshadowing going on here, plenty of setups and payoffs. We think back early to some dialogue sequences meeting with Griffin, the Invisible Man, of course, his brother, and some of the stalking of Elisabeth Moss' character I thought it was
really well done how they built the tension between the Invisible Man and her, and she thought she'd escaped. It was all good. And then it just slowly became, and then she realized this is him. I know it's him, but no one else believing her. It's a sort of a trope that we've seen before, but I don't think done this well.
No, and despite being a trope, thematically, it really resonates with this theme of gaslighting and domestic abuse.
Yep.
We can think, we can look at this as, okay, this is a woman who's clearly escaped a man or just a partner who's escaping an ex of theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this looming feeling of, I'm never going to get away. They're always going to be watching. They're always going to be listening.
Very uneasy.
Yes, very uneasy and unsettling. And here it plays out with someone in an invisible suit.
Which just makes
How
it even...
fantastic.
Exactly. Just makes it even better. Even some of the scenes with the knife in the kitchen, where he, she walks off frame, but the camera stays at the kitchen. Brilliantly
staged and blocked.
Yeah, correct. And then you see the gas go up and then catches fire. And then obviously when she's in the bed with the child, the phone goes off. Just weird, creepy little things that I haven't seen in cinema before, and it all played out well with...
There was a lot of restraint early on.
Yeah.
Which is expertly crafted. That's someone who knows how to get a hold of his audience and really grip them by the head, not let them go, and it pays off fantastic by the time we get to the second and the third act. Particularly when we get to the mental hospital, that point on, I'm riveted.
Yeah, and most of that front half of the film is shot in 2 different houses, and that's it. It's not
awesome for a low budget.
A ravenous location or beautiful landscapes. This is just an ordinary house, and they've somehow encapsulated the audience to being really enthralled by this invisible man, and where could he be next? Where could he pop up next? And then things just keep building and building. And then there's that scene where she gets a call about being pregnant.
Yes.
Did you catch up on that? Did you see that? They cut off just before the doctor said it. I thought that was an interesting scene. I was already caught on. Were you?
Yeah. I remember thinking back to when the doctor calls, thinking, what's this doctor calling about? We're foreshadowing. We're setting up a plot element that's going to be paid off later in the film.
Love that.
So much of that was in this screenplay. Super tight.
A lot of
Maybe if there was some more in the budget, we could have seen some of these elements executed a little better. That was my main gripe with the film. I'm sure you've got something different to say, but clearly Leigh Whannell has talent.
I look at this film with a different eye because of the budget, and I think for what they've done with 7 million is phenomenal. I think I haven't seen a film put together this well with such a low budget. Not recently, anyway.
Very reminiscent of John Carpenter in the late 80s, who would have these horror films come out, super low budgets. Everything's on the screen in tight locations. It's feels like you're in a chamber. You're locked in there.
And there was CGI in this film when she was stabbing the suit and things like that. So there was some elements of CGI that need to be implemented as well. And you have an outstanding actor like Elisabeth Moss. I don't believe she'd be cheap to get, and then the music, I think it's a pretty astounding job. One of the big plot twists as well I want to get your thoughts on was they're in this restaurant, Elisabeth Moss character and her sister. They're in the restaurant, and you see this knife floating, and gets a slit thrown in front of everything. I was shocked when that happened. I thought, wow, this is stepping it up a notch. This is great.
It was a bold decision.
Yeah,
I love that the movie went down that route. Absolutely explored the concept of an invisible man, other than just having him stalk her. We really got to see some high stakes at play.
It just turned it on its head, the film on its head, and everyone just thinks that she's stabbed her own sister, and also the dramatic tension where she's just lost her sister as well. That plays into effect. Not only that, but
she's clearly in a rough mental state to begin with.
She's already in a rough state, and then that happens. It just elevates it even more.
It all starts
just makes it look crazy.
It does, and it all starts making sense when this happens, and when she goes to the mental hospital, having lost her sister and clearly being blamed for the crime. Then that flows into, okay, she's been given this fortune. What's the only way that that she can be removed from her supposedly late ex's will? Well, that's if she's not sound of mind to use that money.
Yeah, and then so we head into the sort of the second half of the film there, where she heads into the mental institution, and that. Did you like that part of the film where she was in there? And
I loved it. That was
yeah.
that was my favorite sequence.
Yeah, right.
Watching that, flashing back to Terminator 2. I'm not going to say Leigh Whannell stole from it. He's clearly borrowing, but if you're going to borrow from something, why not borrow from the best? James Cameron. I loved some of those quieter moments, realizing she had the Invisible Man in her cell with her. And then we got
That's the thing. Did she? We don't know. This is another thing. Like, it's implied, but you don't know.
It's implied. Then we got to see that concept really stretched out and fully realized as the Invisible Man takes on the guards, he's taking on nurses, she chases him outside. Wow. From that point, I was hooked.
Did you like that sequence? Because I've had a few people say that was the weakest part, they thought.
Really?
And I disagree, yeah.
I disagree too. That was my favorite sequence of the film.
Just because of the fact that nowhere did anyone say he was a trained fighter. Because the way he was taking these guards out was a bit extreme.
He's invisible. What do you mean it's extreme?
But I mean,
they can't see what's going on.
I know, but the way that these... Like, it looked like he had super strength. At the end of the day, it's a film. I don't really care in the fact that there's a small little plot hole here and there. Like, I'm not thinking about plot holes when I'm watching. A lot of people will just think of... Oh, that's not. How did he do this? How did he do that?
At that point, you want to be so engaged by the film that you're switching off to some of these contrivances.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect movie.
No.
And some of the writing is clumsy, how we get from point A to point B to point C.
Yeah.
Could these things be tightened up? Sure. But at $7 million, my God, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop using that word.
And in that scene as well, there was a Saw Easter egg. I don't know if you caught it. There was a graffiti of Jigsaw.
All right.
Yeah, so he put a little nod in there as well. That scene where they're outside and there was the rain coming down, I thought that was pretty well shot as well. That whole sequence with the fighting. And then we moved on to the final parts of the film where he frames his brother, I guess, or he... Not frames his brother, but it's implied that the brother is the Invisible Man. And
yeah, see, here's where the wheels fall off the wagon for me.
Really?
We have pretty much a Scooby-Doo reveal of our
Yeah,
villain.
it is, isn't it? With the mask on.
We remove the hood and, oh my God, it's the brother. I can't believe it. Hey, he was set up and there was something a little foreboding and a little off. I didn't like the payoff.
No?
A more experienced director or, I don't know, a different payoff could have been handled. It absolutely should have been handled better. And how did this guy fake his own death only to be found in a wall? Like, what did they mock up a body? At that point, it did jump the shark.
I didn't mind it, to be honest. I always had, like I said, this uneasy feeling about that brother throughout the whole film. And then, so when he was revealed, it was like, okay. But then I thought, is there 3 suits? How does that work? Is there, because we know that Elisabeth Moss gets one later as well.
How did this guy Griffin build 3 invisible suits and no one go to check his home and clear? Like, what?
That was the only sus thing. How the house was so clean when she went there to get that suit. To get that information.
No one believes her, but this guy's got a company and built 3 suits.
But when she goes, this was the one part that was funny to me. When she goes to the house to learn more about him or whatever it was, the dog's still there and greets her. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Has it been dead 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months? Who's feeding the dog?
To me,
is the brother feeding the dog? Is the brother there the whole time?
To me, that says one of them is still living there, whatever it is. Even then, wouldn't the police or whoever find something for that house? I don't know. Anyway, that's a plot hole, you could call it, but. I didn't mind the Scooby-Doo reveal, as you say, of the brother, and then it tied in where he was found in the wall. But what really elevated it for me was that final scene, Elisabeth Moss and the Invisible Man, where they're in the dinner table. She goes to have dinner, and she pretends that she's going to rectify this relationship. And throughout the film, he's been saying the word surprise at certain key moments.
It's a little tacky.
Really?
It's a little cliche.
Okay.
It was a bit heavy.
I find the opposite way, where they didn't say it enough for it to be cliche, in my opinion. I thought It was tasteful.
It was a bit on the nose.
You think it's on the nose? Okay. That sort of storytelling I don't mind because it's validation to her that she can kill him now because she knows it's him. And so then she goes and gets the suit and does what he did to her sister. But even through all that, we don't know. As an audience, we suspect it's him, but we don't fully know. We never see him in the suit. We never see him revealed. Obviously, it's implied he was in it. I believe he was in it. You believe he was in it, but we never see it.
I enjoyed that it was implied. Maybe, maybe some more clarification on if it was Adrian Griffin by the end and not the brother for the entire duration of the movie. I might have enjoyed that a little more. I understand that the character was meant to be this master manipulator, and that's going to put more sympathy on Elisabeth Moss. That's really going to help elevate these themes of gaslighting and domestic abuse. Yeah, I agree with that, but at some point it was getting a little bit messy. I know you've said you loved that ending sequence.
I really did. For
me, it just didn't quite land.
Really?
I enjoy the idea that her character's now been raised to become this Hitchcock blonde, and she's now empowered. She's walking out in this black dress, and this is now... It's like she's got her life back, and it's her world for the taking by getting rid of this man. Maybe a stronger performance from the antagonist could have helped. It like I said, it fell off.
Really hit. I thought
the peak was the mental hospital. Everything after that was just didn't hit.
Right. I really thought it was a great ending to top it off. Maybe that's just my opinion, but let me know what you guys think, listeners, over on our social media channels. But I thought it paid off quite nicely. Another thing on those three suits that we talked about. So obviously, Elisabeth Moss character. Sorry, I've forgotten. I'm terrible at names. Cecilia found a suit for herself. There was another suit for Adrian.
Yep.
And then the brother had a suit. In that timeline, he must have had his own suit, correct? Or he was the one in the mental asylum.
Who?
How else would that
Adrian
work?
or the brother?
Because we cut from the asylum where he's fighting all these guards.
The brother?
Straight to the interaction at home.
Straight to Adrian being revealed as having been shackled up in a bathroom.
So we went from the mental hospital straight to the house fight. So there must have been two different suits, correct? So what I'm saying is after the...
Yes, there are more suits.
Yeah, so there's implied that there's three suits, which is interesting. I don't know whether they would go for a sequel with Elisabeth Moss as the Invisible Woman. I don't want to see that, do you?
No, it's interesting that you do mention that, Dan. Around the time of this film's released a few weeks ago now, it was revealed that Elizabeth Banks is currently working on an Invisible Woman project, something more in a comedy vein, as a writer, director, producer, very similar to what she's done with Charlie's Angels that dropped late last year. However, that did bomb, so who knows what's going to happen with this project.
She hasn't got a good track record, Elizabeth Banks, unfortunately, not recently.
Yeah. What about the behind the scenes with this film? How did we come about with an Invisible Man project?
Well, I went to an advanced screening with Leigh Whannell and got some really good insights about the project. Obviously, about a lot of it was shot in Australia because it's cheaper here with the dollar. We've got, he even said here in Australia, the crew are actually more switched on. They're actually more talented. This has come from his mouth. He believes they're more talented because there's less saturated. There's all the films are filmed in LA. There's so many films filmed there where you can't get the best talent. When you're in Australia, there's less films being made, so you're getting the best crop of the talent.
They must be hungry here.
They're hungry as well, and we're switched on. So he said that for one thing. He said Elisabeth Moss was fantastic to work with, as we thought. She brought a lot to the table, and a lot of the time she's by herself in a lot of these scenes. Bit of isolation, if you think back. So he said she was always happy when there was other people coming into the set because she's always crying or moping around by herself.
It's very emotional, very raw. Don't blame her.
Yeah, but yeah, he had some great insights. He talked a little bit about Saw and how he came up in the business and how he was on the cutting room floor the entire time for Invisible Man, helping with the editing. He said, look, if we had more budget, we could have done a lot more with the action scenes. He said we did as much as we could. These machines, so they use these cameras for those scenes where, you know, the fantastic scene where she's fighting him. They use these robotic cameras to capture that. It was incredible. This incredible technology to.
Oh, it looks great.
Because there's this scene where he throws him across the table, and they've got a stunt woman with harnessed up, and they throw, and this robotic camera actually tracks them the whole way.
Wow.
It tracks them. But then they also do it with Elisabeth Moss, but not the throwing part. They do the start and the end, and then chop it all together into one, so it looks seamless. That's all really interesting stuff.
Top-notch editing in this film.
Really good editing. He said, yeah, if he had more cash, he would have been able to do more. But he was happy just to have this greenlit, and he got attached to the project through someone at Blumhouse, I think it was, or.
Yeah, they contacted him after Upgrade. Did you see
Yeah,
Upgrade?
they contacted him Upgrade. Yeah, I loved it.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, you got to see it. Really good. It was sort of a sleeper hit, I guess you could call it. It had a lot of fans after its release, so it was sort of not a bomb, but it didn't do great at the box office, and then eventually went on. So they loved his work on Upgrade, and eventually said, "Look, we'd love you to do a standalone." And then so he wrote Invisible Man, and he said he spent 8 months on the screenplay.
That's a while.
I think it was 6 to 8 months or so, and then started making it. And he always had Elisabeth Moss in mind for it, which was interesting.
Wow,
But,
that's massive. Wasn't Johnny Depp meant to play the Invisible Man?
Really? I'm glad he didn't. I don't know what he's done recently. He's really gone off, hasn't he?
Yeah. Universal were meant to be rebooting all these old movie monsters like Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, The Invisible Man, and of course The Mummy. Do you remember that with Tom Cruise just a few years ago now?
Yeah.
Yeah, coming out of that, and we'll have to post a pic of this on our social medias. Coming out of at the time of The Mummy's release, there was this photoshopped image of Russell Crowe, Johnny Depp, was it Benedict Cumberbatch, and Tom Cruise as well? It was this awful looking image.
All four?
I guess off the back, before having released one film, which was The Mummy, that definitely bombed. They were meant to be launching this new cinematic universe, just didn't quite come together, but glad that one failed. Now we have The Invisible Man.
Yep. Yeah, so it was really fascinating how they shot this film, because obviously it's an Invisible Man, so they need a lot of green screen stuff with the subjects and a lot of erasing. He said that it's actually easier to add a CG werewolf into the film than it is to remove a normal person.
Wow.
It's very difficult. So they had to do workarounds. A lot of those scenes, actually, they had to fiddle with the cabinets in the background or the curtains. That's how they got away with it, rather than trying to remove him and keep that intact. So that's how they went around that. But it's fascinating how they did it all. And it's all in Australia as well. I'm tooting the horn of Aussies right now, but
kudos to all the hardworking Aussies in the film industry.
That's it.
Are you okay?
He's sitting in that chair.
Jackson, what was your favourite scene?
The mental institution.
Yep.
We're watching Elisabeth Moss start to kick ass. Something
in
straight out
particular,
of
the fight
Terminator 2.
scene with the guards, or the ordeal before that?
I'm going to say the whole package.
The whole package, that whole section.
The
30 minutes.
Yeah, the film almost felt like it was taking a left turn, but it really was a natural progression of this story.
Yeah.
This is a concept fully realised.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed that part. It took a turn that we needed, I think. I think we saw it play out a lot in the house, and we needed a new environment. We needed a new story element. So that came at the right time. And I didn't think it dragged throughout the whole film. I thought it was pretty neat package, as you said, and that was just another cog in the wheel. I thought it was, really well executed, and those fight scenes with the guards was pretty entertaining as well. Don't get me wrong. For me, my favourite scene is going to be that knife scene with the sister dying. I was visibly, I turned to my friend Tom and said, "Shit, this got real." I was shocked. You got to remember, I was not expecting anything from this film. I thought it was going to be a B-grade film. Real, not B-grade as in, I knew it was B grade budget wise. B grade is in the quality. I thought this
The
was going to be a
expectation
generic
was low.
horror. It was
The
low.
bar was set low.
If you're just going off the name The Invisible Man, you're not thinking it's like The Boogeyman, you know. Do you think that's going to be a riveting film? So that scene really shocked me, and it took a turn for the better for me for the film, and had some stakes to it, and just executed well. Everyone in the restaurant was shocked. It just felt like a real twist. It wasn't a twist, but it felt like one of those moments where you're like, wow. I don't know. Maybe I'm tooting the horn a bit too much.
You certainly love it.
He said that wherever I went, he would find me, walk right up to me, and I wouldn't be able to see him. Adrian is dead. He's not dead. He has figured out a way to be invisible.
So that'd be my favourite. Jackson, if we're going to replace Elisabeth, it's very tough.
That is tough. How do we do that?
This is a segment where we try and replace the main lead in the movie.
I've got a pick. I got a real hard pick.
Do you?
We did see this actress in something similar last year. I love her. There's no way her schedule would have compensated for this film. Florence Pugh.
Yes, fantastic. That would be my pick, but I can't pick yours. So, Florence Pugh, Midsummer, similar sort of vibes. Yeah, I agree. She would have been fantastic.
No comment necessary.
No comment. I agree. I think she would have been perfect. Although I loved Elisabeth Moss, so
Really tough to recast.
yeah. Maybe she's a little bit too young. That was be the only thing, Florence. But I guess
I like
doesn't
it.
matter. It doesn't matter the age, does it?
No, not at all. If she's young, then you've got a vulnerable element there of someone who was a bit in over their head when they got into this relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. I might go with Megan Fox. I'm only kidding.
Bold.
Only joking. Can you tell me a film she's been in besides Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the last 5 years? Go.
I had Transformers on the tip of my tongue, but that was about 15 years ago.
What Transformers did you say? Shit, she would have been 12 then. I don't know how old she was for that. No, for me, I might go with Alicia Vikander.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Great pick.
Yeah, Tomb Raider, Ex Machina, very good actor.
Ex Machina, what a film. That's an episode right there.
We need to do that. She's got the acting chops as well. I think she could have done a pretty good job. Of course, we'll never know. But that all being said, I think Elisabeth Moss was the right choice. And Leigh Whannell wanted her from the start. Box office predictions, it's already sort of out there. We're a bit late on this one. Last time I checked, it was at 100 worldwide.
It's well over 100 million
For
at this point.
For a $7 million budget, that is a success.
That's fantastic. If they've got a break even on marketing at what, 15, 20 million, they would have put a bit into marketing here.
There was a lot of marketing.
Fantastic.
There was a lot of marketing. Universal put a lot into this film, a lot of Facebook ads and this and that, as I saw on YouTube and that, but I'd already seen the film at that point.
Dan, it's at 100 million right now. What could this get to? It's still got plenty of screenings to go.
It might end up in the 200 million mark by the end of it, which is a huge success for...
He's hoping Leigh Whannell gets a bigger budget for next time.
Correct. I think he will. Final ratings, Jackson. Overall thoughts to tell our listeners. Do you recommend? Yes, you do. Final thoughts.
7 out of 10. Kitchen knives at the dinner table. Initially, I had this at a 6. Reflecting on the themes, what this film has to say and how it's executed more, it's a 7. Go see this if you haven't. Don't be put off by some of the January, February horror movie looking marketing where you're not sure what to think about the project. This is a must-see. Leigh Whannell, his next few films are going to be ones to watch.
With films like The Grudge, Fantasy Island, these really average horrors.
Are they both from Blumhouse?
I believe so. I'm not 100% certain. This is the horror to watch this year. This is for me, Jackson, this is my favourite film of the year so far.
Wow.
We're in March. It's early days, and it probably won't hold that position. But for me, it hit on every cylinder, whether it was cinematography...
Great performances.
Solid score.
Great screenwriting.
Great screenwriting for a horror. and overall, really enjoyed it. Would recommend to anyone. For me, it's an 8 out of 10. Beautiful. So a 7 from Jackson and an 8 out of 10 from me, guys. Make sure you check out this film if you haven't, and let us know on Letterboxd, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, Spotify, anywhere you can find us. Let us know what you thought of it. Before we go any further, quickly, thank you to Displate for sponsoring today's video. Displate are thick metal plates with gallery quality prints on them. They stick to your wall easily and look great in the office. I have 3 in here, and we're going to get more movie ones. We are thinking about getting a Back to the Future one, maybe an Interstellar one, Inception, Dark Knight. There's multiple ones you guys
Just a
can
few
get.
Chris Nolan films.
Just a few Chris Nolan. I'm not a fan at all. And it's really easy to attach to your wall. Easy magnet mounting system. Doesn't require any nails, tapes, power tools, anything. Easy on. And guys, with our code, WeWatchThis15, you can get 15% off. That's WeWatchThis15.
I'd love to
Thanks.
get a print of Terminator 2, The Thing.
They've got all the classics. And
We have to do it.
They're not the traditional movie posters. They're you can get those, but there's also really creative artists out there that are creating ones like the ones I've got here, Jackson. So it's a unique thing, and it's perfect for films. That you've got to get some in your office. But yeah, we watched this 15. Jackson, what did you watch this week before we end the podcast?
This week, I watched The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which wasn't so extraordinary.
What's that? It rings a bell, but when was it made? Who's it by?
So this was back in 2003. This film retired both Sean Connery and Stevie Norrington.
That's right. I
This
saw
was
this
a-
on your Instagram.
This was a hot pile of garbage.
What happened to this film? You had some good
I
insights.
have no idea.
Really?
Clearly, Sean Connery and the director Steve Norrington did not get along during production.
Right.
This really shows. On a
chemistry
$70-odd
or
million
whatever.
budget, about 20 of that goes to Sean Connery, and
70
there's not
million.
much left to spend on everything else.
70 million.
70 million, and it looks like it was
Wow.
made for about 10.
What's it about and where's it set?
It's set in about every location on Earth, yet they all look the same. And what's it about? Having watched it now for the first time in years, I really couldn't even tell you.
Really?
We've got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We've got our own Invisible Man. We've got Dracula's girlfriend, Mina Harker. None of it makes any sense. There's some plot to have World War I tanks sold off to different countries, and then we're also going to sell off the blood and skin of some of these extraordinary people. But none of it makes any sense.
What genre is it sitting in?
Don't watch this genre.
What was your final rating for that?
That was 2 out of 10.
Wow. That's
Don't go
bad.
see this.
That's terrible. Thankfully, I don't think that's on many people's watch lists anyway.
If
but
it is, take it off.
yeah, it wasn't on mine. I hadn't even heard of it. Well, the film I watched, it's not a traditional feature. It's a short film.
All right.
Yeah, it won the Academy Award for Best Short Film. It was The Neighbour's Window.
Right.
Have you heard of it, Jackson?
Yeah, I did hear about this one. Can't say I've seen it.
It's one of the best short films I've seen in recent memory. It is a really neat story within this 20-minute film. It hits on all cylinders.
How long is it?
From comedy to drama, all in this 20-minute package. It's fantastic. It's a story of a couple, without trying to give too much away, a couple who are just going about the motions in an apartment in New York, and they're not loving their life. They've got 3 kids, and they see this younger couple through the window, and they're loving life, if you know what I mean. They're going at it every other day, and the older couple start to get invested in these people across the building, and it almost becomes obsession where they're always looking. They've got the binoculars. They're both looking all the time, seeing what they're doing, and then eventually things unfold across the room, and it gets to a dark place. It's really good. I really recommend it. You watch it, Jackson.
It sounds like Hitchcock's back from the dead for this 20-minute short film.
It's
gonna
really
go
well
see it.
executed. Yeah, I want you to see it. Come back next week. It's fantastic. 20 minutes. It's on Vimeo, YouTube, free access anywhere. Just go out and see it, guys. I really recommend it. I'd probably give it an 8 or 9 out of 10. So, yeah, that's The Neighbour's Window, guys. Thanks for tuning into episode 3, guys. Really appreciate it. Follow us on all social media platforms. We Watch This podcast. And follow me at Dan Allen Movies on Instagram, Letterboxd, and the rest. Jackson, where can we find you?
You'll find me at Marshall on Film with an underscore on Letterboxd, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Beautiful. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for listening.